In the source filter theory, the hypothesis is that all English speech sounds are created by a combination of a sound source and the filter between the source and the lips. That results from oral articulation. In the case of vowels and resonant consonants, phonation in the larynx is the sound source, and that gets filtered by the complete vocal tract from the larynx out to the lips, or in the case of nasals, through the nasal cavity. For obstruent consonants, there is a noise or a transient for a stop burst that's filtered by the vocal tract between that source and the lips. So generally that is a smaller resonating cavity. As a result then, when we look at a spectrogram which shows us the amplitude at different frequencies for different speech sounds, we generally see a lower frequency noise and formants for vowels and resonants, those periodic speech sounds, due to the large resonating cavity. Whereas for something like a fricative, there is high frequency noise due to the relatively small space shaping the noise from where the S articulation is made at the alveolar ridge to the lips. So the idea is that the acoustics of speech come from different combinations of the sound source with the shape of the vocal tract, and each distinctive phoneme in a language will be a combination of these things. What we study in speech science is how acoustics and articulation correlate with each other for these distinctive phonemes. Starting with vowels, we can look at articulation of the corner vowels, such as the high front vowel. That involves raising the tongue body, and so since the tongue rides on the jaw will be raised using the masseter, the temporalis, and the medial pterygoid. The mylohyoid supports raising the tongue body. That's the muscular floor underneath the tongue. The genioglossus can also help pull the tongue body forward by pulling the root of the tongue toward the front of the jaw. In addition, the vertical muscles in the posterior part of the tongue will help compress the back of the tongue and move the tongue mass forward. The transverse muscles can pull in on the sides of the tongue to bunch the tongue body up into the space inside the maxilla near the alveolar ridge and hard palate. For the high back corner vowel, like the oo, again, we have a high vowel, so jaw raising, mylohyoid supporting tongue raising will help raise the tongue body. Since we want the tongue body raised but pulled backwards, that will have to be supported by the styloglossus, which courses from the sides of the tongue up to the styloid process at on the temporal bone of the skull. In addition, in articulating oo, the lips are rounded and protruded using the orbicularis oris muscle. The inferior longitudinal muscles will pull the tongue tip down and help pull the tongue mass back. And again, the transverse muscles will bunch the tongue body, helping raise the mass of the tongue up near the back of the hard palate and the soft palate. In the case of the low corner vowel, the low back vowel, we have a lowering of the jaw by relaxing the masseter, the temporalis, the medial pterygoid, and perhaps active lowering by infrahyoid muscles, the mylohyoid and the platysma. The hyoglossus pulls the tongue body back and downward toward the hyoid bone at the bend in the upper neck from the jawline to down the neck. And vertical muscles throughout the tongue can also contract to help flatten the tongue body. The A vowel is a potential additional corner vowel, but it isn't generally talked about in that way. English has that low front A vowel, but a lot of other languages of the world don't. So it's the E, ah, and oo that are generally talked about as your primary corner vowels. If we do want to have the tongue body be fronted and lowered, there's one combination of muscles here that would help us do that. In the first two answers, we have action of the styloglossus. That's going to pull the tongue body up toward the temporal bone, so that's not going to be too useful. Between choices 3 and 4, hyoglossus is a good lowering muscle. Genioglossus helps pull the tongue body forward, so I think number 3 is your best answer here. When we get away from the corner vowels, we basically have articulation that's a combination of the different muscles that create the corner vowel articulations. In the case of O, where we have something that's back but more mid, we want the tongue body to be pulled back, but we don't necessarily want it particularly raised or lowered. In this case, a combination of the styloglossus and the hyoglossus both will help pull the tongue body back, and using both of them, you won't have the tongue excessively raised or excessively lowered. 3 and 4 include the genioglossus, which is going to pull the tongue body forward, which isn't helpful for a back vowel at all. And mylohyoid in answer 1 generally can either help pull the tongue body forward by advancing the hyoid, or raise the tongue body by making that muscular sling the tongue sits on more stiff and raised. As we convert these articulations to acoustics, we have periodic sounds with the vowels. There is a phonation sound source giving us a harmonic series. Some of the cues for that manner should be evident when we look, for example, at a spectrogram. We should see some of that within period of variation due to the very short time windows of analysis for a spectrogram. In addition, the phonation itself may be visible on the spectrogram as what's called a voice bar, something that looks kind of like a small formant, which we'll talk about a lot in this unit. Sometimes the voice bar and the first formant overlap, and so you can't see a distinctive separate voice bar. The primary acoustic correlates of vowels are the resonances of the vocal tract. We have a special name for these resonances, which is formants. The formants are numbered starting from the lowest and working their way up. So F1 is the lowest resonance of the vocal tract, F2 is the second lowest resonance of the vocal tract, F3 is the third lowest resonance, and so forth. For vowel sounds, differences between F1 and F2 are enough to distinguish all the different vowels in English from one another. Here we have spectrograms of the 3 point vowels, E, ah, and oo, where the formant frequencies are marked. In the case of E, the first formant and the voice bar overlap to give us a very wide, dark region at low frequencies. And then there's a fairly large gap in frequencies before we get to the second formant, and then above that the third formant, and so forth. In the case of ah, there's quite a bit of low frequency energy, a distinct voice bar separate from the first formant, and the next resonance, the second formant, quite close to that first formant. In the case of oo, the first formant and the voice bar overlap with each other, giving us that wide dark band again. And then the second formant is quite low in frequency and close to that combination of the first formant and the voice bar. In general, when looking at a spectrogram, we can interpret aspects of the acoustics on the basis of frequencies that we would expect to see given the general size of a human being producing speech. So the voice bar comes from the fundamental frequency of phonation, so that should be at the bottom of the spectrogram, and for adults in the range of 100 to 300 hertz, perhaps a bit higher when analyzing children. The first formant is generally below 1000 hertz, so you'd be looking for a resonance, a dark band of frequency information somewhere in the range from 250 to 900 hertz. The second formant is the one that varies the most on the basis of articulation. It can be found anywhere between 800 and 2500 hertz in general. The third formant is usually above 2000 hertz and normally around 3000 hertz for most individuals. But those formant frequencies do vary both by the vowel quality as well as by characteristics of the individual. Here we have a spectrogram of a syllable. In fact, it's the syllable that I showed you a spectrogram of earlier when I was talking in general about vowels with low frequencies and consonants with high frequencies. The quasi-periodic sound in the first half of this spectrogram has a visible voice bar at the bottom, and then a dark band which has a little bit of light running through the middle of it. In addition, the width of that band being so wide suggests there's two different formant frequencies there. If we're looking for the first formant, then that would be the one around 900 hertz. The second formant will be just above that. Among the choices here, 1250 would be the next highest frequency where there's a resonance. 2800 hertz, the fourth answer, marks about the region of the third formant, and 250 marks about the region of the voice bar.